Afternoon. This is John Firth from Firth and Friends. We try to meet every other Thursday at 12 or 1 o'clock to talk about interesting subjects for professionals, business people, CEOs, and owners. And this week, we're going to turn to the world of nonprofits. Almost everybody is involved with a nonprofit in some way or another, and we like to think of them as charities when we talk to Ben here. Ben is the CEO of Charity Buzz. And they have found a way to unite e-commerce and cause in a way that benefits multiple hundreds of charities while doing good in the world. And as you can see, Ben believes do good and live well. So Ben, I'll let you introduce yourself and then we'll start with the topic, impact is greater than clarity.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so everyone, I'm Ben Irwin, CEO of Charity Buzz. We're the world's leading marketplace where people can go and live out their wildest dreams, all in support of really, really incredible causes. Primarily auction-based platform where we're offering up access to the world's most exclusive people, places, events, and every single dollar that is spent or bid on Charity Buzz gets directed in some capacity to a charitable organization. Been around for 13 plus years. We've raised over $550 million for about 4,000 charities. I've been here almost from the beginning, started off in business development, and now I run the mothership. We also have a sweepstakes business and a shop business and a concierge business. So it's all in pursuit of our vision to build the world's first and largest impact marketplace and leverage the power of e-commerce for good.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the topic, impact versus charity. What's your vision? And you, that was a title that you felt very strongly about. It's a great title. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of charities and nonprofits and the desire to make increased impact.
Sure. So I've had the benefit of being in this space for the better part of my career, and I've seen everything great and everything what I would call backwards in the charity sector. And when I say impact is greater than charity, what I mean is we need to throw away the old notion of what charity is. I always think of the vision of the volunteers in front of the department stores ringing a bell for the Salvation Army. So it's giving, and it's these ideas of what percentage of my dollar is going to the cause. And it's not thinking about these organizations as businesses. We're tasking the charitable sector with solving the world's most pressing and complicated problems. Go cure cancer, feed the homeless, save the environment, but we're not giving them the tools or the respect in order to do it. So when I give my money away, I think of it as an investment, a social investment. And what I want to know is, how are you going to fulfill your mission? How are you going to solve the problem your organization sets out to do? And one of the ways we measure that is through impact. And that requires really, really solid management, a business plan, a strategy, benchmarks, all of the same things we talk about in the world of business. But for whatever reason, we're scared of bringing into the charitable sector. So there needs to be a gargantuan shift in the way we think about charities if we want them to succeed in solving these problems that they all focus on every day.
So one of the first things that we talked about when we were planning this topic is the fact that now charities or nonprofits are sort of getting on board with the newest technology, digital technology, marketing technology, and peer-to-peer fundraising, if you want to call it that, but just new funding mechanisms. Tell me a little bit about how you see this developed in terms of nonprofits adopting these newer technologies, and what are the benefits? Obviously, funding is one of them, but also the awareness, the brand awareness, the lack of geographical boundaries using digital technology.
Yeah, so we're fortunate enough to see more and more charities embracing technology, digital solutions, albeit at a much slower rate than their for-profit counterparts. And one of the impetuses for starting Charity Buzz was this knowledge and this insight that allowing more charities to take advantage of digital solutions will allow them to just be more efficient at raising money and telling their story.
Right.
So what we built was a system or a platform that they could more or less just plug into rather than having to develop and embrace all of these different areas themselves.
Mhm.
But it gives them the tools that they need to accomplish their two most pressing issues. The first being raise money. You got to have the funding in order to be able to go out and again solve these really important problems. And then you have to have a microphone or a loudspeaker to be able to tell everyone why this is an important cause and what you're doing about it in order to make some progress. One of the stats that, John, I know you and I have talked about a lot is, every year you hear about how this generation is more charitable than the previous generation, so on and so forth. But back in the 70s, they started measuring the percentage of GDP that was being given away to charity. And it's hovered around 2% ever since they started measuring it. So actually, there is no more charitable generation. It's all stayed the same, yet the number of charitable organizations has grown exponentially.
Right.
So it's become more and more competitive. But most of these charitable organizations are still doing a lot of the same stuff in terms of fundraising. And that just makes it harder and harder to maintain the same slice of the quote unquote pie that they need in order to operate. So by embracing better distribution through technological solutions, we're giving charities the opportunity to go very far beyond their traditional donor bases or areas of influence and start being able to raise awareness in larger groups and be able to hopefully then convert that into more unrestricted dollars that will help support their work.
So there must be some sort of, I don't know if it's change management or what you would call it, at these nonprofits and charities and so forth, that they have to go through, or maybe not, to be able to understand what they're getting themselves into. Do you find you do a lot of hand-holding of some charities that aren't quite getting what's going on, or do you find that people are pretty up to speed about e-commerce, digital technology, and so forth? Certainly in the business world, I mean, this is almost like, this is 25 years old. Amazon, Amazon's 28 years old, I think, right? 28 years old this year. So how are you finding the receptiveness among charities?
It varies. There's no charity that will get in front of, and once we meaningfully describe our value proposition, our suite of services, our case studies and track record, they don't believe and understand that this is valuable. But that's step one. Then they need to actively participate in a partnership. And one thing we know that all charities have in common is they're strapped for time, they're strapped for resources, and they don't have enough staffing. So this becomes another thing that they feel like they have to add to their to-do list, which in some cases is difficult for them to activate. Some of our most successful partners have seen the value of our partnership so much so that they hire new people against our relationship just to manage the Charity Buzz campaigns year in and year out. And they're the ones that are seeing the most upside potential because, like any partnership, you get what you put in. So the ROI increases as you scale up the investment of time and resources, because then we do as well. We're a rev share business. So our goals are perfectly aligned from the second we start working with the charity. It's just all about maximizing the amount of dollars raised. And we put a lot of our own effort and resources against it so that we can help these charitable organizations make the most out of their online fundraising.
Yeah. I was always fascinated by your business model ever since we started working together. It was just fascinating to me. The fact that people will buy or have a tendency to feel better about their purchases, buy more when they know the money is going to a good cause. And you certainly have a really wide assortment of exciting stuff, from art to experiences to travel and leisure and so forth. I just want to remind the audience, anybody who's joining us or has just started, this is about increasing the impact of nonprofits in using technology, digital technology, and the internet in ways that don't require them to really make huge investments in a platform. Ben and Charity Buzz allows them or gives them the platform to extend their reach and also extend possible donors. But you started out a little bit differently. You started out in a very specific niche, right, Ben? You started the company started about 7 or 8 years ago, if I remember correctly?
No, even more, 13 years ago.
13 years ago. Wow. Okay. So it was really just to extend the charitable annual fundraisers or galas for an online auction. But COVID hit, and you suddenly be very interested to hear about all the pivots you made and the additional business lines you brought in, and you as a CEO, the decisions you made along with the owner of the company.
Yeah, so John, you're right. Historically, especially when the business first started and it was just a few of us trying to figure out whether or not this was viable, we would attach our auctions around annual galas or fundraisers. And it was an opportunity for that organization to expand the reach. So the question always being, you've got amazing set of experiences or items you're going to auction off this evening. Why limit it to 500 people in the ballroom at the Plaza, at the Beverly Wilshire, or wherever your event is? Why not give it exposure to a much larger group of philanthropic, affluent users? And that was the beginning of the business. But in order for it to scale, we had to pivot the business into becoming more of a platform than an event-based auction company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really focused on when I took over the reins a few years ago. And a lot of that foundational work, having more control of our inventory, trying to mimic more and more the best practices of e-commerce companies, and really treating and believing in ourselves as an e-commerce company, allowed us to get through the pandemic a lot better than we would have otherwise. Because if you think back to when the world shut down, yes, we're an e-commerce company, so we had some benefits, but traditionally our marketplace consists of intimate experiences with influential people, typically surrounding large scale events. So when the world shut down, our entire inventory was no longer viable. We had to take 1,000 plus offers off the site. We had to manage tens of thousands of experiences that were scheduled to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, work with our customers and donors. And then we had to think about, well, how do we fit into the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? At that point, no one knew what was going to happen. And we're definitely not fortune tellers, but we tried just to understand what the consumer was going to be doing in the short, mid, and long term, and then build strategies around how we were going to meet them in each of those phases of behavior, and do it in a way that allows our charities to continue to be able to raise money. Because the other thing people don't realize is when markets are down, when there's something as globally disruptive to the world as COVID was, people stop giving money away. Yeah. And any money that people do give away goes to whatever cause is staring them in the face. At that point, it was COVID related, a very worthy cause, but it's not as if
the only cause. It's not the only cause in the world.
There's a cancer research, homelessness, the environment, human rights organizations. I could go on and on. Were any less important? What happened then was the capacity or the need for funding, it doubled or tripled. More organizations needed more money. So we had a mandate. We had a need to be able to have some role in helping out those charities. So it was trying to figure out, okay, well, what do these consumers want now? They want things to put a smile on their face when times are tough. So it was a lot of virtual experiences. It was a lot of travel happening in the future to give people something to look forward to. It was high-end spirits and wine. It was we launched a whole new vertical of having your favorite influencers and celebrities follow you on social media, which turned out to be a multi-million-dollar vertical for us. So it was really just putting the energy behind trying to figure out where to meet these consumers. And then that's when luck or happenstance started to occur more frequently because we were putting more energy out there. And I'm not going to lie, the first 3-4 months of the pandemic were really difficult for our business, but then we came out of it. 2020 was a great year. 21 was a best year by a factor of 2x, and our business is better for it because we had to innovate faster than we've ever done in the past.
Yeah, no, I mean, I followed a lot of that. It was pretty awesome. I think, as I said, the most interesting thing was how you pivoted and found these new business lines. You really went from one business line to 4 or 5 within a period of 18 months. But what do you see going into the future? So the world has changed again. We have another crisis, Ukraine, which, I mean, I don't even need to discuss it here. That is maybe not as in some ways more momentous than COVID because of what it's done to supply chains and how it's reordering the world against Russia in ways that nobody, I think, even thought would happen when it started. We all thought it was maybe going to be short term, and we all thought it was wrong, but nobody realized it was going to have this effect. What effects is this next global, if not pandemic, but event having, and how do you see the world evolving and charitable giving, online giving, if you will, developing?
Yeah, unfortunately, we just live in a world where there's very few moments in time where something tragic and unfortunate isn't happening. So this is just our reality. Our owner, my boss, always says business is hard. Even when you think you've figured out 20 other things come at you, but that's why success is what everybody strives for. Because if it was easy, everybody would be successful, and it wouldn't be something that you really look to go and obtain. Look, the need for giving is going to continue to increase over time. Humanitarian disasters, natural disasters, the climate emergency, and the way I think about it, and why, again, I like this whole notion of impact over charity, is we have to change the way that we think about this entire sector. If the percentage of GDP that goes to charity has stayed the same for the past 50 years, yet the need for funding has increased considerably, well, then there's a big gap that we need to fill in.
And a need for impact. I mean, just plain and simple solving problems.
So I think there's 2 ways that we can help, hopefully as part of a much larger coalition, fix this. The first is figuring out other ways where you can drive more dollars to charities. This idea of our impact marketplace is creating a very large e-commerce destination, curated, really exclusive and unique inventory, where a portion of every purchase is supporting a great cause. And we do it across our business. That'll make a small dent. But you think about extending something like this across all of e-commerce. Back in 2020, e-commerce sales in the US totaled almost $900 billion. So you think about taking 5% of every charge that goes along in e-commerce and allocating that to charity. Well, now you're talking about $44-45 billion. That's 10% more dollars that would go to charity every year if we can just figure out all these different ways to seamlessly and thoughtfully integrate it into what we're all doing every single day, regardless. So that helps drive more dollars to the charitable sector. Then the second part is, again, this notion of impact is, when you're considering giving money to an organization, it's probably a personal decision. There's a connection to that cause that's based on life experiences. But how do you choose which organization to give the money to? Well, if you're an ultra high net worth individual, you've got a team at your bank or investment institution that's going to do a whole bunch of analysis and tell you this is the best organization to accomplish this philanthropic goal. But for everyone else, we need to figure out how to reorient this sector to talk about impact and not about what percentage of their budget goes to overhead.
Right.
That is the only measurement right now that is used to determine whether or not a charity is good or bad. And we all know that if we applied that same methodology or measurement to the for-profit world, the most successful companies on the planet would be deemed failures because they're investing all of their money in people, in innovation, in growth, but there's no incentive to do it on the charity side. And that's why we're seeing too much status quo.
Well, what about B Corps? Because B Corps are relatively new. I don't know if we call it legal or accounting. It's still for profit, but it has a impact, a mission. Usually mission driven organizations get the B Corp status. Although I'm still struggling a little bit to understand what the benefits are of being a B Corp outside of the obvious optics and support it gives in terms of support of you achieving a mission. But do you work with B Corps, or what's your view of the B Corp status?
Yeah, I admittedly don't know enough about the benefits or requirements for B Corp. I know there's like sustainability and environmental commitments you have to make. You're then part of the B Corp coalition. I think that's supposed to encourage more facilitation of partnerships and referrals and so forth. Yeah, so I can't comment on the merits of becoming a B Corp, but what I can say is, yeah, we need more companies to be focused on how they can have more of a positive impact on the world through their everyday activities. And the beauty of it now is it's not just because it's the right thing to do. We know, especially for consumer businesses, it's good for business.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The last time Cone put out their survey on cause marketing, I think it was something like 85 or 86% of consumers say like they would prefer to purchase a product or service that had a positive social impact, even if it might even be a little more expensive than the alternative. So now it's you're incentivized to do it because it'll help you drive sales and it's the right thing to do, which then begs the question of why aren't more companies doing it?
That was my next question is why aren't more people doing it? I mean, for me, Tom's Shoes was always certainly not the first company that's done it, but first very successful company that has built a brand around the fact that they take, I don't know what percentage of their profits and put it back to the people who make the shoes. I mean, they actually give back literally to the communities that are serving them or their vendors. And even then I was wondering, why aren't people doing it more? I mean, you've proven you can make money. You've done some tweaks to your business model that were tremendous as far as I can see. So you've proved it. Tom Shoes have proved it. So why aren't more people doing this? Why aren't there more companies who are saying this is the way to go?
Great. I don't have the answer, but Tom Shoes is a great case study. It's also a great reinforcement of this idea of impact over charity. I have no idea who or what charity is involved with Tom's, but you know of the impact that when you buy a pair of their shoes, a pair of shoes goes to somebody in need. That's impact. That's tangible. And that's going to drive even more of the desired consumer behavior. Because if a consumer doesn't know what a charitable organization does, and more importantly, what their impact is, there's this sense that the money's going into a black hole of sorts. Like, you want to know that when I give this money, that it is going to be invested towards doing X. And again, that's knowing about the strategy, the plan, what's our unique approach to solving this problem. That's impact. That's what we need to be focused on. And you have to believe that if that becomes the focal point, that inspires people to give more. People want to give more when they know what they're giving is having the desired effect.
Yeah. No, I think you said the focal point, because while you were talking, I was thinking, Tom Shoes made that a cornerstone of their marketing, of their brand. I mean, that's what they were known for. Now, they had quality shoes. I've, for some reason, never bought a pair. I've looked on their website, and I was looking specifically for some summer shoes, and I guess I didn't find them, but I would buy in a minute. Although, actually, because of COVID, I haven't needed any new shoes for about 2.5 years, 3 years. But I had a client once who ran a series of coffee shops in New York City, and they gave 10% of their profits back to the coffee growers. But I don't think they really marketed it that way. It was more sort of an upscale cool. They had very cool locations, well trafficked, but I don't think they ever went to market. I mean, literally marketed themselves as an impactful company. And I wonder if it was a difficult ride for them because of that. But what about some of the big corporations? What about an Amazon? or an eBay or so forth. We were talking about Amazon the other day in terms of just the sheer volume that goes through them. And even if just a portion of that was given away, um, why do you think they're not doing it? Again, it's a clear consumer value proposition. By the way, I should say we are talking about impact over cause, and I'm here with Ben Irwin. And if you'd like to contact him, talk more, or to get involved, or if you run a nonprofit that's looking for additional funding and/or exposure, here's his contact information. I'll leave that up for a while. Yeah. So how big can this thing get? Do you think this whole notion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as big as the size, at least what we're talking about, of the e-commerce world. And whether it's 5%, 1%, what we know is the amount of money spent online is only going to grow substantially for the foreseeable future. So even maintaining a small percentage of those dollars and allocating them to organizations that are having the greatest impact, we just have to bet that that equals a better world, better outcomes, more progress, all of the types of success and activities that we as conscious consumers want to happen. With Amazon, they have the Amazon Smile program where you can allocate a very small percentage of your purchases to a charity. It seems like what they're doing is, and I don't know this for a fact, but Mr. Bezos is using his insane war chest of money, and he's just giving it all away to a bunch of great causes. And that might be what's feeding their soul, in which case that's great because it's an incredible amount of money. So yeah, I think
Bill Gates and Bill and Hillary, I mean, a lot of that's the more traditional route too. The issue I see with that is that they have an agenda, and if you don't fit within their agenda, you don't get funding. I actually worked for the philanthropy department. I don't know if you know this, back in the days when it was Chase Manhattan or Chase Bank in 1989. And I was the one who was evaluating cultural institutions, nonprofits. And I was kind of the decision maker, who was going to get money and who wasn't. These big institutions with large war chests, they're very, they have big illustrious names. The foundation is in the name of somebody. The smaller guys tend to get lost a little bit, or the ones that don't fit neatly into their agenda. Would you say that's a hole that you fill, or because I know you have some large charities as well that you work with?
Yeah, I would say so, and I agree. The other problem, so to speak, of that approach is you're giving all of the power of where the money goes to a handful of people,
Right.
and one of the big changes we'd like to see happen in the world of cause marketing, especially across e-commerce, is giving consumers the power of choice. So whether it's when you check out online, or I guess the analog version would be, if you live in New York, you go to Duane Reade, and when you check out, it says, do you want to round up and give the money to Charity X? Well, unless Charity X you're connected to in some ways, that entire program is not compelling, because
not really.
That's the whole thing with charity and cause. It's personal. Like nobody, you can't say, oh, my cause is more important than yours, or you should be giving money here. Like you give money to organizations, again, based on life experiences. So what if when you went to check out, or when you went to purchase across online, you got to choose what organization the money went to? And what if you were able to know that the money you gave had some sort of quantifiable impact, that these $10 were going to feed 10 families in New York City, soup kitchens or shelters, like create a currency of impact and allow that to be attached to the currency of purchasing things. That just becomes, I believe, a really enticing and interesting way for us to move all of this forward, because again, unless you know deeply about an organization's plans, you're just giving money to I'm giving money to lung cancer research. Well, what does that mean? I'm giving money towards a clinical trial for a new stage 4 lung cancer treatment. Okay, well, that is going to compel people more because you're giving them information about the impact of your dollars, not just the charity.
Well, so you bring up another topic, which is the complexity of this. So at a point of sale, I think, I go to Dwayne Reed all the time. And if I had to then think about the charity, or if it wasn't, if there wasn't a list, I probably at that moment, I'd be more concerned of just making sure I got the transaction right and got what I needed, instead of going through a list to think who I'm going to give money to at that moment. But you have the added benefit that you've got the platform that can handle the complexity. And I know you're migrating to another one, a new platform, so that you can grow even faster and better. But is the complexity very hard for consumers to deal with? Or do you find that it actually, having smaller organizations, you talk about one organization as an example in Southern Jersey, I think a food bank or something, that suddenly gets nationwide recognition simply by being on your platform, or at least finds new donors outside of Southern Jersey?
Yeah. So what we currently do, I like to think of it as level the playing field. So the analogy or anecdote I always use is, like, put yourself in the shoes of the head of fundraising for the food bank of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So every day you wake up, your job is to raise money to support your work, but your donor pool is always the same. It's first people that live in New Jersey, and second, people that have some connection or interest in food security, homelessness, whatever you're currently working on. Outside of those two criteria points, nobody has any reason to give you any money. There may be a food bank where they live, or they may have decided to give their money elsewhere.
Right.
That's a difficult spot to live in. I could see that head of fundraising banging their head against the table, because they know the need for their services is only increasing. Let's say that same organization is supported by Bruce Springsteen, who we know is a very famous native New Jerseyan.
Right.
And Bruce Springsteen's willing to meet and greet somebody, a fellow supporter of the Food Bank of New Jersey, for 3 minutes after his upcoming concert at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
He's already meeting people anyway, corporate sponsors, radio station promotions. So literally carving it around a already scheduled event. We auction that off on Charity Buzz. We sell that for upwards of 6 figures. It's called $150,000. But what we're doing is we're appealing to Bruce Springsteen fans.
Right.
Bruce Springsteen fans are global. They probably overlap very, very minimally with that donor pool that the head of fundraising from the Food Bank of New Jersey is focused on every day.
Right.
So we've done these before, and there's a humongous fan base in Europe for Bruce Springsteen. So that $150,000 could come from a very wealthy family in Belgium. So now the biggest single donation or major gift that the Food Bank of New Jersey may get in a calendar year from an individual is from a family in Belgium. Right. What other scenario or situation could that occur? It's the same money. It's unrestricted. So the food bank gets to decide how to invest that money into their programs and mission, and everybody wins. And perhaps that family in Belgium learns more about the food bank and decides to support them in other ways. But it's giving them a complementary and completely incremental way to think about fundraising. And that's what's important for what we do. We're not saying, hey, charity or head of fundraising, we just want to take what you're already doing and we want to make it better. No, we want you to continue what you're doing, but here's this whole other pipeline of unrestricted dollars and opportunities that we can leverage, and we bring the buyers. We have our own audience, which is probably our biggest differentiator in the online auction space. Is we come with our own user base, and these are people who come to Charity Buzz to buy really, really awesome stuff you can't buy anywhere else, and to support great charitable organizations.
Hence, what we say, nonprofits thriving at the intersection of e-commerce and cause. I'm if I'm involved with nonprofits, it's always been, and I've done fundraising, I've done a number of things. It's always been in the in the performing arts, just because I feel strongly about it. I see both an educational portion to what I do, as well as just a societal give back. Plus, some of the art forms are very near and dear to my heart, opera being one of them. And we know the Metropolitan Opera, for example, has a couple of things. It has a huge deficit because of COVID. It's always around teetering on financial, if not ruin, at least it's never been a smooth ride for them because they have a gargantuan house they have to support that I think was more expensive to operate than anybody foresaw. They only have about 20 or 30 big donors that they can rely on to give more than $5 million. And they have a budget, I think, almost $500 million now. They're the largest cultural institution in the United States. And I assume they haven't started working with you guys. What percentage, though, how many arts organizations do you have? And it seems to me, the other thing they have is they've got a roster of from very famous to maybe not so famous opera superstars. And so taking your knowledge of the consumer and how to find those people, you'd think, Peter Gale did an amazing thing by doing HD transmissions of the operas to movie theaters because he came from Sony, he understood digital technology, and this was 15 years ago. It was radical, and it broadened their audience. But why aren't arts organizations waking up and coming to you? It seems that between having the performers and having an e-commerce platform and their need for money, I don't know if you have an answer to that.
So let's say a few things. One, we talk about a lot what the future of this business looks like and all the new exciting innovations and directions we're moving in. But it also is important to note that this core business, us running charity auctions for charitable organizations and creating really amazing experiences, the opportunity there is still massive. I mean, we work with a few thousand charities. 1.4 million of them. And, we could go through a very, very quick list right now of amazing organizations we don't work with. Part of it is because we haven't had the chance to have meaningful conversations with them. Another part is they're just, they're resistant to change. And, I think that's probably there within some cultural and arts institutions where they're a little more tied to the way things used to be, their galas and their fundraisers. Well, one of the interesting takeaways from COVID was it forced a lot of these organizations who in the past were resistant to doing things online. Well, they were forced to do it. They had to embrace because their traditional ways of funding and raising awareness went away.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of what we do is, even if we don't have a current demand for a specific type of experience. So let's say experiences with famous opera performers, like you mentioned. I don't know if I have a huge group of existing users today that are interested in it, but again, that's the beauty of digital. I can go find them and I can go market this to them. I can go cultivate it because that's probably a pretty easy subset to target and to socialize this information with. And that's another big piece of the value that we deliver. We have a whole digital marketing and advertising team. So we also can help these organizations find new ways, because back to my Bruce Springsteen example, this one's even clearer. You find a huge opera enthusiast anywhere in the world.
Right.
And if they're not already supporting the Met, but they get access to one of their favorite performers through an auction for the Met, well, that seems to me to be a pretty good opportunity for the Met to convert that person into a donor and then add another probably deep pocket philanthropist to their group of supporters.
No, I think there is a cultural biases or DNA there. Metropolitan Opera was established in the 1880s and it was for the new rich then. And ever since then, maybe up until the 70s, it was, if you had made it socially in New York City, you were on the board, you were somehow involved with Metropolitan Opera as you were with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. That started to change, and it's a much more universal phenomenon, opera. It doesn't demonstrate wealth the way it used to. I mean, if you want status, I don't think opera necessarily is that in most cultures. Some cultures, still Russia, it's still very big, Latin America. But in America, it's just part of the mix of everything we entertain ourselves with. It's nothing, if anything, symphony, classical music is sort of trending downwards, which would be more of a reason why they would want to come to you or something. So that is sort of my personal mission is when I talk to these guys, I do send them to you. I don't know if any of them have done anything yet, but the world of what we call serious music, or the Germans call serious music, classical music, has so many benefits. They've also scientifically proven that if you listen to Bach and Mozart when you're pregnant, a woman, the child will be smarter, for lack of a better way of putting it. But anyways, this has been great. Again, if you want to get in touch with Ben, here's his information. Is there any last thing you want to impress upon our listeners around charities and nonprofits and e-commerce?
Hopefully people can get a sense that I love discussing this whole area. This is my passion. And it's going to take a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and a lot of help from many other people to make this type of shift we need in the sector to, again, create the type of change we need and solve a lot of these big problems. So that's my info on the bottom. If anybody wants to discuss it more, please reach out. But thanks to John for having me. And it was really fun talking through the topic of impact and why it should be the focal point over charity.
Yep. And thank you also, Ben, for being so informative. I always have a good time talking to you. Hopefully this video now will start being watched by other people. The bulk of the audience actually comes after the live event. And hopefully it'll touch some people that will want to get involved. And anything I can do to contribute. It's a very fascinating business you're running, and it's just, as I think made evident, it's a sort of a head scratcher of why people aren't running towards this, because it seems like a no-brainer for me. And yes, it may be more work for the organizations, but the benefits are just tremendous.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John. It was fun.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Bye.